Hello and welcome to the video commentary for Goblyn issue 11B. I am Solomon Mars, creator of Goblyn Volume 1 in the 555 saga. Just get right into talking about like this cover, which is really just it's actually one of the interior images, one of the pages. I thought it was really powerful. It was a powerful image of 26. And so I decided to just use it for the cover. It showed the intensity of, like the fight that was actually going on inside, and the fight that was to be expected between he and Riduha. And I do like the way that this particular comic reader that I'm using, which is called Comic Rack, is actually, if you tweak the settings, it'll actually reproduce color backgrounds, and the color that it picked for this cover is really nice. It makes it stick out even more, as you can see, like with it has that purple border around it. But I mean, the colors that I picked for the cover are slightly different than, well, they're very different than the colors on the interior that happen in this same scene. Those are more browns, whereas this is more purple. I just thought it seemed slightly appropriate. I don't know. I don't remember my exact train of thought for it, but I know that I really wanted to use those specific colors on the logo, and so I just kind of went ahead and made the entire theme sort of these purples and sort of blues and things like that, and it worked. It just kind of worked along with 26 somehow, and especially his blade that he has, which I always forget the name of that blade. I am sorry. I always forget the name of that blade. It's a specific type of blade. It's I forget where it's used mostly, or its origins, I should say. But I guess it doesn't matter. Not right now. If I remember in a later commentary, I'll bring it up. Hopefully, I'll remember at some point. Anyways, this first image, the title page, is really just me doing what I like to do, which is throwing in a random image that sort of hints at something else, possibly a future storyline or just some other event. And it was supposed to be there were supposed to be a few of them, and they were gonna be dropped throughout the story, but throughout like this entire issue, and then a couple more in the issues after this, and I decided against it, just because it's way too confusing an element, because all it was going to be were pictures like this, where you just saw sort of incense burning and candles burning and things like that, and sheets of paper with writing on them, and with no context whatsoever. And I mean, at first I thought it was a good idea, an interesting idea, but it would have done more damage than good in the end, and so I left it alone with this one image. Once I had this one image, I abandoned it. I totally abandoned it once I saw it, along with the rest of the book. And this close-up of Riduha bleeding. Clearly we've moved into the fight between the two, several minutes in, and things have happened. And this is the same image that was used for the cover, and you can see it's a whole different color palette, but somehow it still works with the character, and it's the same colors on the actual character, but it still works somehow in context. I just thought it was a powerful image. And Riduha doubled over in pain here, and it's just kind of playing up that sort of defiant spirit in Riduha, and how, I mean, clearly he's in more pain than 26 is, and he's succumbing to the poison, all the different poisons, a lot faster than 26 is. I mean, 26 is able to stand up straight, whereas Reduha is sort of doubled over in pain, but still, you know, he's intent on either stopping or slowing 26 down. He doesn't want him to capture Amy, and so he's just kind of picking himself up and continuing the fight. And I just that's part of his character, and I wanted it to come across in the things he does and not necessarily the things he says. And of course, this is almost sort of a contradiction of that, because he actually says, you know, there's nothing I can't handle. But that's his nature. He brags a little, and he acts like nothing's wrong, and continues. And of course, actually, I had fun with this whole sequence. With 26 being really agile, you know, just really insanely agile, which was actually how I was supposed to introduce the character. In the sequence when their boat is stopped by the bandits, I was actually going to show what he did to the well, not necessarily completely what he did to the bandits, but my way of introducing the character of 26. I had his eyes were supposed to start glowing, and he was supposed to jump out of the boat and do a flip through the air behind the bandits and land, and then you saw his bat, the tip of his bat turned into a dagger and started going towards them, and that's when I cut that sequence. But I cut the whole thing because I thought, no, maybe it's too early to reveal maybe the degree of the intensity of the characters, and so I held it back, and I actually stuck that similar sequence in here instead, because I mean this is not exactly how this was supposed to happen 100%. The events were supposed to happen, and that being that like, well, you see like Reduha here, he tries to basically hit him, and instead he kind of nothing. There's sort of a puff of smoke, and he ends up cutting a part of the boiler, and it turns out that it's sort of an illusion. And the whole hallucination illusion thing, that was supposed to, that angle was a part of the story originally, but it wasn't supposed to play out like this. And I thought this actually worked a little bit better, taking that older part of the story and applying it to this part of the story. I thought it just kind of, it helped make the 26 character more entertaining versus him just kind of running around the room and jumping around and stuff like that. You know, like to have him actually leaping and flipping and things like that. It was just more visually entertaining. And him sort of taunting Reduha and explaining that he's been hallucinating the whole time, and that he's sort of just been chasing a hallucination, and that 26 has been standing here the whole time just watching him. And Reduha unfortunately cannot spin around and in time, and this was actually an image that I was talking about in an earlier commentary, where I was talking about sometimes the layer effects that I use don't always work depending on what color is underneath, because it's a matter of translucency. The effect doesn't always work, and you can kind of see it, like it works against the blade. It mostly works against Reduha's shirt. It's a little bit darker, but then the space around Reduha it pretty much negates that entire effect, and so it looks almost black, sort of blue, and it's, you know, and that's actually supposed to be blood, but so it sort of ruined the entire effect that I had been doing up to this point, and I didn't think about it enough. Otherwise, I would have just had two different layers using that same effect. But I was so frustrated with this image and how it wasn't looking exactly how I wanted it to look, and I just kind of left it at this point and almost abandoned the picture, because I always give myself a time limit. I can't spend more than an hour on any individual page. I try not to give any individual page more attention than an hour, and that gives me enough time to, you know, get everything done and then step back from it, you know, decide if I'm really committed to those colors that I've picked, and if not, then I can go in and change them. And I was changing it so much within that hour, and it came really close to the end of, you know, to my allotted time, and I was just like, okay, leave it alone, walk away. There's nothing I can really do for it. But it's still, I think it still works in a way. It's still sort of a powerful image, but it's not the image that I had in my head. And that, you know, that happens. It happens. You know, that's the nature of art. Sometimes you're not able to fully interpret the things in your head, but it can still be interesting visually, what comes out. I don't know. There's something about, like, this whole fight between Amy inside the mech and Sapphire. I just like the way a lot of it looks, the colors that are being used, and like this picture, I love the arcs that are happening on Sapphire, going more so leaning towards they're sort of leaning towards the left, whereas the movement of the mech is moving more so towards the right. And I just thought it was kind of fun. It's a fun image. And just playing around with water effects. I kind of want to get better with water, and so I knew that this was coming way back, you know, in early issues. I knew that eventually there was going to be the fight in the river, and like I had actually mentioned in the earlier commentary, and I think the last commentary actually, that the whole story, this part of the story was supposed to take place outside, but it was supposed to take place outside in the river. But since the river actually flows through the castle, the base of the castle, it cuts right through it. The same events could happen just inside, and it's just an opportunity to practice using, you know, drawing, coloring, water, and just doing water effects. It's really, you know, it's just kind of a fun thing. Water is a very fun, organic thing, both in animation and in comics. It's this sort of wonderful, free-flowing sort of thing, and it's not linear like architecture. And you know, I mentioned a long time ago that I am very much into organic, you know, just organic things, organic shapes, just the way that nature kind of flows in multiple directions at the same time. It's just, it goes wherever it needs to go to get to the, you know, like a tree, you know, it flows in any direction as long as it's going up and out and getting to its goal, which is light. And I just like the way that, you know, I admire, you know, that you know, that aspect of nature, and all nature is sort of flowing and organic, and just water. Just playing with water is great, and I like the little ripples and the waves in here, and getting a chance to do that, it's just kind of fun, because it's a lot different than everything that I've done up to this point. You know, has mostly been sort of rock effects and things like that, and while those themselves are organic, they're more structured, and the water is sort of free flowing. So you have to show that the water is sort of free flowing, but these people are moving through it, so they're disrupting that stillness, and you sort of create that. You have to sort of replicate that, and it's fun for me, at least. Another shot of the interior of the mech. Amy sort of fidgeting around with the controls and realizing that the guns are jammed. And there's something about the colors that were used on Sapphire, like her shirt and her scarf, or handkerchief, or whatever you want to call it. She's wearing it like a scarf. The colors that are used really work with the background, the environment that she's in. They make her character really pop, and I like that. That she stands out no matter where she is in any of these pictures. And yeah, this whole event is playing up the strategic nature of Sapphire, like in contrast to 26 or Sune. You see, she's more strategic, and she's more manipulative, and it really plays out a lot that she was making Amy do certain things in order to get to her goal, and in order to get to Mumu. She was actually making Amy do all these things. And so, like, this whole idea of taunting her by kicking at the front window was an excuse to distract Amy enough to eventually to get to her end result, which we'll get to that. But she's just taunting her the whole time. Of course, it's sort of baiting, but it sort of baits her in a slightly different way than expected, which is Amy bringing up this the hand and finally getting the guns to work. And I do like this image to a degree, showing Sapphire sort of jumping around the mech, but still on it, and really just adapting. She just instantly adapted to the situation and moved her attack from in front to on top, because she couldn't get through the front windshield fast enough. Maybe she could get through the top faster, and in fact she does. And I like that's her character. She's really adaptable. She's very strategic. She's just very quick, in thinking, and of course Amy, not necessarily slow herself, but this was another one of those pages where it was supposed to be a sequence. It was actually supposed to show Amy's foot hit the gas pedal and push it in. And again, I just kind of decided against overloading every issue with those kinds of sequences, and I just instead went for a solitary image that used sound effects and slight blur effects, slight motion blurs, to sort of show that she was pressing on this thing. This image is slightly tragic. It's not exactly how I wanted it to look. In all honesty, this one probably should have actually been a 2-page sequence showing the mech actually squatting for the jump and then pushing off from the water. It really should have been. It would have helped it would have actually helped it look more powerful. It would have made that jump look powerful, because it sort of looks just sort of light. I don't know. There's something about it to me that looks sort of light. It doesn't look like there's really any weight to the neck. I do like this. There is weight to this image. Clearly, they're being pushed through the air, and you sort of see how close Sapphire's body is being. It's actually being pushed almost completely over the top, this sort of dome of the mech, and I like that she's being pushed down really intensely, and she's having to hold on tight. And I think that actually has weight to it. I like the way that image came out. And of course, her jumping off at the last minute as it crashes into one of the pillars inside at the base of the castle. That's just a fun image. This again plays into my early love of Shiro's work and the way that he would make sort of rock and concrete and structures crumble and break apart, and this is all early influences by that, you know, and it's all fun. And then we come back to Jeff, who is paying attention to this entire fight that's going on between those two, and not to what's going on in front of him, and he almost gets caught off guard, but Senkofa, he actually calls his name just in time for him to pay attention. And I really just kind of wanted to get this whole fight between between Sune and Jeff kind of at a point where, well, really it was a very specific point that I was trying to get to, and it was somehow the whole fight was really stretching. It was really extending itself, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And it was because I needed to get to that place, but to get to that place, there were all these little obstacles that kept popping up, and it's just kind of the way that my mind works, and I kept creating these obstacles. It was like, oh wait, but this should happen, and this should happen, because that doesn't make sense for it to get to that place before this happens. And so all these things were happening, and this fight was really dragging out really long. But I realized that the end result that I initially was going for wouldn't really make sense unless their fight had lasted a while. And so I kind of came to terms with that, and I was just like, okay, well, I accepted it, you know, and just let everything just kind of play itself out in the way it was. But I definitely wanted to call back to earlier issues where Jeff was way more agile, and he would jump around, and he was sort of I don't want to say free spirited, but he was just, well, I guess I said he was more agile, and a little bit more reckless. He got to a point where he was very reserved. And I wanted to sort of get back to that recklessness of him, that adrenaline rush that he was feeling, being sort of combined with Senkofa and using logic again, to that degree that they do when they're both combined. Really just getting caught up in the chaos of this fight that he's in with Sune, who herself is just pure chaos, I guess I should say another reason why I wanted to initially take the fight between all these characters outside and not have it inside is I've always had a problem with in both in comics and in animation, you know, anime, manga, comics, animation, film, anything. I've always had a problem with when they have these large epic fights that are happening in a populated area, you know, where there are people all over the place, and it's just like there's all this destruction and stuff, and it's like, who's going to pay for all of that? You know, I mean, the citizens have to eventually pay for that, and it's always bothered me. I mean, I know it's kind of absurd to you know, kind of attach that to something that's like fantasy, but that's just kind of where my mind goes. It thinks about that reality. I mean, when that sort of thing happens in our real world, well, eventually they have to rebuild, and somebody has to pay for all of that, and it's always just bothered me because they sort of it always seems like creators are being very irresponsible when they have depictions of that kind of thing. When it's wanton destruction, it seems very irresponsible, and so I was I thought about that. I've always thought about that, and so I decided that they shouldn't be anywhere near people, and that's why Rock Eater was so outspoken about trying to get everyone away from the interior of the castle, where everyone was located, where all these people were living, all these homes and stuff, and actually trying to get people outside. Trying to get Jeff and everyone else outside, because she knew that they couldn't avoid a fight, but they had to take it away from the people, because she didn't want innocent people to be injured. And so that's kind of where I was going. I like the idea of sort of that the destructible environments and things like that, but I've always just kind of looked at it like, especially when it's taking place in a city. It always bothers me when it's taking place in a city, and I understand it does happen. It does happen, but even in reality, it happens. Destruction in a city can happen depending on where you are and the conditions that are going around, whether it's nature or at the hands of man. But there are consequences to those actions, and I didn't want. I as a creator don't want to seem like I'm being irresponsible, and by doing things like that and then walking away from it and not really showing the consequence of it. And so, if ever something like that happens, do know that I will show, or at least talk about, the result of that kind of thing, because it's one of those things that sticks with me and stays in my mind. So anyways, back to this fight between these two. You really see Sune sort of going back to that sort of introduction of her character and her logic use, and you see she's using her logic sort of like in that sort of dart, sort of dagger way, like when she I don't even remember his name. That's odd. I can't remember the character's name that she initially killed that was fighting against Jeff and from the rooftop. And you sort of see her doing the same thing here, and it's actually sort of cutting away at pieces of this rock. And I wanted to show, just how intense she's being, and I also wanted to get back to that early sense of Jeff getting injured. He's not indestructible character. He's very vulnerable. He's powerful, sure, but he's still mortal, and and showing that he's always in under the threat of death and injury, and so he has really what looks like a simple cut, but that cut across his leg represents the realization that no, he's not fast enough, and no, he's not skilled enough, and no, he's not indestructible, and that Sune is a threat, and if he slows down one bit, she will probably catch him and catch up to him and kill him, and that's no good. Of course, again, kind of using his sort of like I said before, his sort of sort of trademark technique. This sort of illusion that he does, where that wasn't him the whole time. He had long since moved on, but she didn't see it. And of course, she recognizes it as a sort of cheap trick. But before she can actually finish her statement, suddenly Jeff reappears, kicking her in the stomach. I wanted that to look intense, I wanted that full power of that kick to show up, and just show just how really desperate Jeff had become upon his realization of like his situation, and that Sune wasn't really someone to be played around with, that he was going to have to take this fight a little bit more serious than he was. And then the transition, which I liked. You know, it was done on purpose. It was definitely done on purpose, where the kick to Sune ends with Reduha tumbling and sliding across the floor. I was happy the way that came out. And then he's actually got that dagger stuck in his side, which is probably really painful. And I wanted to show like the pain sort of on his face and stuff. It's just kind of, I wanted like all of it to seem very, I wanted there to be sort of a level of desperation, and I wanted there to be an intensity and sort of almost across all of these fights to show sort of the I guess the protagonist sort of on the losing end, you know, that they weren't necessarily winning, that they were actually on the losing end of this fight, you know, because, well, you know, the good guys don't always win. And so I wanted there to sort of be like where the story was starting to lean more in that direction, and in order to intensify it and sort of create this emotional tie-in, you know, to these characters that you've kind of come to know all this time. And I don't know, Reduha's eyes look funny there, sort of sitting off of his head and his tears pouring out. Yeah. Again, this was sort of a matter of the that effect that I was applying to blood prior to this wouldn't work against with the backgrounds and things that were going on in here. It was changing up too much, so I made it pretty much a solid color. You know, I slightly altered it depending on where it is, but it's mostly solid, slightly translucent. Wow, that was weird. But you know, still trying to retain that slightly iron oxide sort of red brown. Yeah, and just 26 being really, really, really intense. Telling him his death will be long and painful, but that he should feel honored dying by his hands. Yeah. And that just kind of plays into 26, his character, and him essentially being from a clan of logic smiths. This clan, his clan, are logic smiths. You know, it's something passed on. Not all of them, but like he had stated, ones that actually were able to push through the poisons and things that were introduced to them in childhood. They survive and they learn all this history of their clan and stuff, and so, you know, he has this sense of nobility about him, and you know, that he has more of, there's an honor system sort of going on about him. And even in these fights, you know, he saw the fact that he was fighting someone else who also studied things like poisons and toxins and venoms and things like that. He saw this as sort of a fight that was done on, it was brought to him on purpose. It was fated, you know, because of the nature of both of these characters. But he still sees himself as above Reduha, because it is heritage for him. This knowledge, logic, for him is heritage. Whereas with Reduha, it was just something that he studied. It was something he decided to go off and study. Not so much heritage. And it's just playing up sort of that, you know, just again, the arrogance of these characters of 26, Sune, and Sapphire, and how they see themselves, their place in this world, their station in life. They see it as being higher than greater than it actually is. I'll actually get more into that around 12b. It'll make a little bit more sense, and I'll explain it a little bit in a little bit more detail. Not only in that commentary, but also in future issues of the story. I'll explain some things. So we see Reduha using his blood, which it's really brown here, but again, the technique that I created for making blood look interesting was not working, so it didn't have that red. It looked more brown against his skin and against the background and stuff. So I just kind of left it as that, and then replicated it on the smudge that he's doing on the floor. And you just kind of see it, it's like, well, what is he doing? And I was honestly hoping that readers maybe had an idea of what he might be up to. But if not, it does show. And you see 26 sort of going into this monologue. It's like, wow, what? But also explaining a little bit of himself, that this is, this whole situation is really about respect and praise. And that really goes into 26's character more so than even Sune and Sethire, and that his station in life and his place amongst his own people, his clan and stuff like that, and also goes into his blindness and having to prove himself, feeling like he has to prove himself, but instantly he notices that the air's changed. And his nose starts to bleed. I kind of like this picture, and I kind of don't. I love that his teeth are really just kind of all over the place. They're not perfect. That's very realistic for me. That just teeth, just kind of being whatever. Teeth, just being teeth. Like that, he wipes his nose, and he kind of knows what's going on, and at the same time he's not quite convinced that what he thinks is happening is actually happening. He's not sure. He's like, you couldn't have possibly poisoned me. But that's not necessarily the case, and we see what Reduha has been up to, and that he's built an incantation here with a very specific symbol in the middle. And he just kind of apologizes to the Rock Eater, stating that she's told him 1,000 times not to use this particular incantation, but he feels that he's at a point of desperation, and that's what I wanted to convey with all the fights at this point are the characters almost putting themselves in danger because they have reached that point. There's just a level of desperation, and Reduha, he's succumbing to the poisons. He's been stabbed. He's just almost he's really in no way really able to fight. He can't really keep going and expect to come out on the winning end of this. So he felt he had no choice. And of course, then there's this sort of barfing thing here. I like barfs. And this one's really specific. This little jelly thing comes out of him. I love the effect. It's all that is done in Photoshop, and even the little tears and stuff. And you see it this sort of jelly splotch. It hits the ground with a little sort of jelly splash. And in my head, it's completely animated. It would have kind of rippled like Jello, on a dish. If you drop Jello or something like that. And I've actually watched slowed down videos of people dropping Jello cubes and stuff like that, and you can find that kind of thing online. You just look for videos and you can find it. And I mean, I didn't necessarily reference it directly, but having seen that in the past in videos, so I was able to think of that and how it looked when I was composing this picture. And so it's a little bit more animated in my mind than it actually is in the picture. I love the drool coming away from Reduha's mouth and the sort of snot running from his nose. It's like a great secondary visualization, like this secondary effect, because that's a reality. I mean, sometimes when you throw up, especially if it's intense, and I've only thrown up a few times in my life, but at least once it was very intense. I had food poisoning, and it didn't hit till later in the day for some odd reason. I guess that's when I digested, for the most part, and it hit later in that day after I'd eaten a couple of times. And I know this is a very gross sort of story, but it was intense, and that's exactly how I was. Snot running from my nose, drooling from the mouth, and it's just like that's how an artist should be, especially a storyteller. If you're going to do comics or even animation or something, but any storytelling where you're trying to be detailed, definitely take from life and from your own experiences secondhand, or if you can, take from those things and utilize that memory and the details that you remember to make the picture more intense and to really bring across the emotion that you're trying to convey in the story. And so that's what I did. I took from my real life experience to make this picture more powerful. And of course you see him, the little jelly blob, sort of shifting in its shape, and sort of Reduha explaining what's going on, and this thing, talking about all the traveling that the Rock Eater has done and all the things that she's learned, and that she probably knows more about the world of poison than 26 ever will, and that this is proof that this dowry from the Marta Dinby thresh, which is just another way of saying tribe, the Marta Dinby tribe, but for sprites they're called thresh, and this particular type of sprite is called a dowry, and they are vicious sort of leftovers from the most ancient period of not only this world but the universe as well, and that they take no sides. Everything is everything. All life is to be consumed. All life becomes death. They are sort of a strange sort of existence of the balance, in that they don't care. They don't take sides. They wouldn't care that Reduha sees himself as fighting for good, and that 26 is essentially fighting for bad. I don't know, or evil. They wouldn't see it that way. They'd be like, look, I don't care. You're both life, and I consume life in order to live myself. And so that's the thing about them. They just kind of consume. They consume. That's all they do. Which is why they were sort of I'm trying to think of the word. Separated from society. They were seen as a major threat to just the existence, the future of the entire planet. Just history itself. And so, they were a majorly complex incantation was created, and it essentially separated them and pulled them out of their existence. Sort of, I guess I can say that, sort of almost splitting it dimensionally, sort of putting them in a sort of between worlds, almost the same way that beings of the higher universe exist anyways. Like beings of the higher universe sort of exist like that. But that's probably getting a little too far ahead of myself in my explanations. But I felt the need to sort of explain the nature of these creatures, because there is no other opportunity to explain it, because they never show up. And so we see it in its final form here. A really silly looking thing, but you know, sometimes the most menacing things come in fairly unmenacing packages. That's just kind of the, you know, the way it is. I mean, there are really small things that are very menacing, and some really big things that are very gentile, you know, very gentile. But yeah, and so he's just kind of like sort of Reduha's last stand. It's sort of you're just looking in with what Reduha is saying, is pretty much saying that this is kind of the end for both of them, that neither of them is going to walk away from this fight. There will be no winner except for this dowry. The dowry is going to kill them both. But that is the only way that Reduha can see to protect Amy, to keep 26 from reaching Amy. And it is kind of unfortunate because that dowry is going to attack any and everyone. It's not going to stop at just Reduha and 26. It will attack anyone that it comes across. And Reduha understands this, and this is why he apologized to the Rock Eater, because she's the only one that can stop him, stop the dowry. And he knows this, and there's a very good chance that it may come across lots and lots of innocent people before the Rock Eater even finds it. But we get a little bit more into the fate of all these characters, and even the dowry, as the story pushes on in 12A and 12B, and the commentary and those issues. So hopefully you'll join me on those commentary tracks, and I just want to say thank you for reading Goblin and sitting through my mindless ramblings here, and maybe up to this point, and hopefully you'll join me again on future commentaries and future issues. So thank you and goodbye.